Well, we're going to begin our A block today with Honduras. Those of us who hail from Latin America, those of us who come from places like, in my case, Cuba, know very well that for more than 100 years, the CIA has chosen who gets elected, who gets removed, and even who lives or dies throughout Central and South America. This is a fact. You could find it in an easy Google search, I think. The list is much too long. It involves Chile, where they, well, assassinated Allende, right? Democratically elected president. Panama, Colombia, the Dominican Republic, El Salvador, Nicaragua. I could go on and on, listing places where the CIA has, manifested coups, started civil wars, sent in the Marines to just out and out remove or kill an elected official. It's part of our history. We all know it, and it's ugly. And it's also true. But many believe that since the Church Committee, which was in 1975, right? That's where the CIA was basically called on by Congress, and it vowed to stop doing that. And most people think it actually did stop doing that. The fact of the matter is, it didn't. Case in point, the coup that removed an elected president from Honduras in 2009. Here now is news with Rick Sanchez correspondent Michele Greenstein.
In Honduras, protesters nationwide demanding the resignation of their president, Juan Orlando Hernandez. They fill the streets with signs calling him a narco-dictator. Narco because he's been recently implicated in a drug trafficking scandal. Dictator because many see his election as illegitimate. Police meet the protesters with tear gas and bullets. This current surge of demonstrations, led by students, teachers, and medical workers, is a reaction to proposals to further privatize education and health services, and are just the latest in many waves of protests since the 2009 military coup against President Jose Manuel Zelaya. Despite a wealthy background, Zelaya moves his government to the left during his tenure. The administration builds new schools, provides students with free lunch, and creates pensions for the elderly. He raises the minimum wage and even distributes energy-saving light bulbs. In 2008, Zelaya joins the Bolivarian Alliance for the Americas, or ALBA, which positions itself as an anti-imperialist group of countries working towards an alternative to neoliberalism. June 28, 2009. It's 5:30 a.m. and heavily armed soldiers depose President Zelaya while he's in his pajamas. U.S. President Barack Obama calls it an illegal coup and says that it would be a terrible precedent if we start moving backwards into the era in which we are seeing military coups. But then something interesting happens. His Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, says that the United States is not going to formally call the event a military coup. The Obama administration is pressured to put the democratically elected president back in power, but fails to do so. Under the new government, schools get privatized, mining on indigenous lands increases, and violence intensifies. The homicide rate increases 50% from 2008 to 2011. Labor leaders get assassinated. Thousands of indigenous leaders, journalists, environmentalists, judges, and human rights activists have also been murdered since the coup. A 2015 survey ranks Honduras as one of the top 5 deadliest places to be a woman, and Global Witness says Honduras is the deadliest country in the world for environmental activism. Even Human Rights Watch, which many criticize as an outfit that neglects to condemn U.S. policy, reports that, quote, impunity for human rights abuses remain the norm and that the judiciary and police remain largely ineffective. The result? A nation in chaos. The slow destruction of the state and the rule of law since 2009 allows drug traffickers, often in collusion with the military and police, to run rampant. The U.S. even increases its arms sales to the country in recent years, approving between 2 and 4 million in gun sales a year to Honduras between 2015 and 2017. These weapons end up in both the hands of criminals via corrupt military officers and the police, who then turn those guns on civilians. At the same time, the United States military footprint in the country grows bigger. And overall, while the situation in Honduras may be a strategic victory for the United States, it seems to be a disaster for its people. For the News with Rick Sanchez, Michele Greenstein, RT.
Now, as you just saw in Michele's report, this all started going sour when the former president of Honduras, who, by the way, is a man named Manuel Zelaya, as you heard in her report, he wanted to reform the country He says he just wanted to give more of its resources back to the people of Honduras, at the expense, though, of foreign conglomerates, most of which are based here in the United States and that wield a lot of power in Washington. And many believe that is what set forth the coup d'etat that literally deposed Zelaya. He was removed from power and has never been allowed to get back into the government. Tonight, an exclusive interview that most in the corporate media wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole.
Here we are with the former president of Honduras, Manuel Zelaya. Mr. President, you were democratically elected, no?
Sí, claro que sí. No, nadie impugnó.
Yes, of course. No one questioned my election. There was no controversy in my election. And I won by more than 4 points.
So what happened? If the people voted for you, how is it that there's a coup and that they take you away from the presidency?
Pregúntele a los que me sacaron, ¿por qué me sacaron?
Ask the people who took me out why they took me out. They entered my home one early morning, and there were only 7 months left in my term. Of course, I had joined the Bolivarian Alliance for the Americas, and people from the United States threatened me, including President Bush. They asked why I was a friend of Chavez and other causes outside of Honduras, which is what pushed the military to violently overthrow me.
¿Usted tiene duda que esto fue?
Do you have any doubt that the United States and the CIA were behind this?
No, usted tiene duda.
No, you all have doubts. I have absolutely no doubt. I mean, the United States warned me. If you sign the Bolivarian alternative to the Americas, ALBA, you're going to have problems with the United States. I signed it, and 6 months later, I had problems. They kicked me out.
And did you try to communicate with Hillary Clinton in that moment, when she was Secretary of State?
No, es que si a mí me tocara.
No,
Mire, si a mí me tocara volver a
because if I had another chance to sign a Latin America alternative for the union of the peoples of Latin America, confronting capitalism, confronting imperialism, confronting the violence, I would sign it again. I was fully conscious of what I was doing, despite the threats coming from the hawks in Washington.
Me imagino si los Estados Unidos.
Well then, I imagine that if the United States had to take you out, it's because you were doing something horrible, no? You must have been robbing banks, engaging in terrorism, or doing something else horrible like that.
Bueno,
For them, yes. Well, the United States has a discourse, their government at least, because you need to respect the people of North America and their democracy. But their foreign policy is imperialist. They impose their rules, and they wave their flags of human rights abroad, but they only apply those concepts to those that they consider to be adversaries. This servant, during the 3.5 years in which I governed, I had the best economic growth indicators in Honduran history, of poverty reduction in Honduran history, the best indicators of human development in history. Honduras was floating. In 10 years, we were going to reach Costa Rica at the rate in which we were growing. But nevertheless, my friendship with Fidel, with Raúl Castro, with Chavez, with Correa, with Cristina, with all the progressive presidents, Evo Morales, Daniel Ortega, all of these progressive presidents, it was to help Honduras develop. Honduras has only looked north, never south, and it was necessary. With President Lula, for example, we were developing projects so that Honduras could advance. So the United States developed chickenpox. They got hives. They had an allergic reaction. And they started to organize alongside Honduran elites and the military, a coup d'etat, and they took me out.
El temor de los Estados Unidos.
The United States' fear, I imagine, was not that you were simply progressive, but that you were a communist.
No, es la competencia, claro. Ellos dijeron que era
No, it's the competition. It's the competition. Of course, they said that I was a communist. Look, I went to Cuba to meet Fidel, being president, and they said, Mel, Castro, communist. Mel is my nickname. Obama went to Cuba and they said, Obama, the statesman. That's the international press that, with rare exceptions, lends itself to that type of coverage. And let me clarify this. I didn't have problems with the United States. They simply didn't accept the competition brought by the oil of PDVSA in Venezuela, the oil of Pemex in Mexico. They don't accept competition because these transnational companies live off monopoly. They live off concessions. And when you give them competition on the free market, then they stop being capitalist. And they become retrograde, authoritarian. And they plan coups, wars, and all these things that you know about. Invasions, and all these things that we know about.
Manuel Zelaya, the president of Honduras, duly elected, then ousted. Tomorrow, part 2 of my interview with him, where we discuss the immigration pattern and why so many people in his country are now coming to America. So you haven't heard that we're the ones covering the stories that you won't see covered anywhere else? In Venezuela, Kazakhstan, let's go to Hong Kong. And the media reaction to that has been crickets. How about the way we cover those stories? What the hell does that mean? Huawei, Huawei, Huawei. That's the key word in this case, uprising. Keep? Can you believe that? Watching. This is the right thing for members of the media to do, to actually pick sides. Look, if you like what you see, subscribe.